Danny Rampling, hello.
Hi, Steve.
It is great to meet you. You're an amazing person to have in for this, because it's fair to say that if anyone's been to Ibiza or to a really, really great club here, you know, the back end of the 80s, it's probably something to do with you. Because you got such a pivotal influence in the club scene and stuff, and I've got so many questions. Hopefully this week we'll learn loads about where we came from, what happened, all those memories we've got of clubbing and stuff and listening to you on the radio. How was it coming up with this list? And I love your list of songs.
I think it's really hard to just pick 10 tracks from the 80s because there's such a wide, vast repertoire of music in the 80s and so many different styles. But these tracks that I've picked are tracks that evoke memories, personal memories. So they're not my ultimate, kind of these are the definitive 80s tracks, but they are all stand up in their own right, and I have associated memories with all of the tracks.
And there's a couple of them that I've kind of heard but didn't know who they were by. Right. There's a couple of them that I haven't heard before, so I'm dying to ask you this first one.
Yeah.
Light of the World. Tell me about this.
You don't know this track?
Well, not until I heard it.
Oh, okay.
And then I read about how it was made famous and how people remember it from your club.
No, Light of the World London Town is a jazz funk classic. Released in 1980. In 1980, I was kind of on the tail end of teenage years. Well, not the tail end, I was in teenage years. What am I talking about? Late teens. But it just, for me, it epitomises London and the vibe of London, and particularly summertime, where we have a great time. And you listen to it now, it just brings back those memories of kind of London in the 70s and 80s, and things have changed dramatically in terms of the city here. So but it's a feel good record, and really captures the spirit of London, and I never tire of listening to it because I'm from London. London is my spiritual home, shall we say,
and you've made
outside of the universe.
You've made such a big mark in London. Because let me just ask you this question: what was a young Danny Rampling like?
An aspiring pop star.
Really? Tell me more.
Well, an aspiring pop star like most kids were in the 70s.
So not the DJing
Well, not most
thing.
kids, but no, but I was interested in DJing at a very young age. My mother used to have the radio on in the kitchen, and I used to help out around the house. And my mother worked 2 jobs, had 4 kids, and the radio would always be on. So I became fascinated by how sound and voice was broadcast through a small box on the side of the kitchen work surface. And it became a fascination and obsession of mine, and I gravitated to that at a young age, and it conjured up imagination of where somebody was broadcasting from, and that's the power of radio.
And what they look like as
Absolutely.
well. And their character and stuff. So
that began at a very, very young age, at maybe 9 or 10, I would imagine, And that was my, I think that was something that it's a big part of my life, because I dreamed of being on the radio at a young age, alongside being a pop star and a farmer.
That's quite varied, isn't it?
And following my grandfather into the military sometime later. But all of these things. But the radio, just having this obsession with radio, and I still do today. I'm a broadcaster on Force Radio .live, and I've been with them for 3 years. I hold a Saturday night show between 7 and 9 p.m. Feeling the Force, that show is called.
Amazing.
All uplifting house music.
I will give it a listen. And of course, there's so many people who would have heard you and felt exactly the same thing. When you started your show on Kiss and Radio 1 and gone, who is this guy? Obviously, you played out lots, and people would have been able to recognise you. This next song, October Love Song, this has got connections, hasn't it? Is it Shoom? It's got connections to the club. I saw on YouTube loads of people have written, oh my God, remember being in Shoom. Just explain, just in case people don't know, Shoom was your club, yeah?
Shoom was the catalyst for acid house. Well, one of the the pioneering. There was 2 or 3 clubs, and Shoom was at the helm, and the foundations for the later rave scene. Shoom was a hot basement here in Southwark, and it held at a squeeze 300 people. It was a gymnasium during weekday hours, and at weekends they'd hold functions there. So
when did it start? When did you open the
1987 in November.
So I think I'm right in saying you've been, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I've just read about this, because it's before I started clubbing, but you went to Ibiza.
Yeah.
And you're like one of the kind of pioneers of bringing the Ibiza experience to the UK. If it wasn't for you and your trip that year, what did you see in 87 when you went there?
What did I see in 87?
That you can tell me about.
A great future, and that music was changing, and there was a vibe, and we went to Amnesia, this open air club, heard this Argentinian DJ Alfredo, who's somebody I greatly admire and respect, and the open air, and it was a great experience, very influential and inspirational.
You were Paul Oakenfold, weren't you?
That's right.
Yeah?
Yes,
okay.
yeah. And the combination of kind of the music and the hedonism, and that was it. The stage was set. So we were all greatly inspired and influenced by that experience, and came back to London and presented a bit of that magic, sparkled a bit of that magic into the London nightlife scene, and a scene was born. The Balearic and acid house scene was born in Shoom and Future and Spectrum and The Trip, and our influences. I mean, people say we did it first and they didn't do it first. It's not about who did it first. It's about how it was done. And Shoom was a free state of hedonism and an inclusive space where everybody was welcome. And
I've got 1,000 questions.
Yeah.
So was it busy from day one, or did it take a while? Tell me about it.
No, it wasn't busy from day one. The first night there was about 100 people, and I promoted that night in conjunction with a friend who was a Rare Groove DJ, and Rare Groove was the soundtrack to London and around the country in terms of clubbing at that time. Norman J, MBE, the creator of well, not the creator, but the director of Rare Groove and that movement, and things were changing. So Chris and Cozy October Love Song, Andrew Weatherall, bless his soul, he actually played that record at a party where I met him in Islington in Chapel Street Market on a Sunday morning as the sun was coming up in 1988, and around the spring of 88. And I that's the first time I heard Andrew play, and I had spoken to him a couple of times before, but that was the night we really, really connected and a friendship began. And he played this most amazing set, and I said to Andrew, I said, I would like you to come and play at Shoom, and he did. But one of those tracks is Chris and Cozy October Love Song, a great synth 80s track, and eternal memories of Andrew with this track, and it's just a lovely piece of music, and those endearing memories of that particular Sunday morning at this this party in Islington.
So many questions for you. I read something. I'm too young to have gone to Shoom, and regretfully,
damn.
There is a sign outside the building where it was now saying the club was here. So it's still kind of around the corner, isn't it, from here?
It is, yeah. It's in Thrall Street, which is off of Southwark Bridge Road. Yeah.
Is it true
that
you sprayed, I'm reading it here, strawberry scented smoke inside the smoke machine, so they kind of gave off this very familiar smell in the club? I heard about it.
Well, the smoke I just purchased from a disco hire shop.
Right.
And that was the kind of that was what was on offer: apple smoked, cherry, strawberry, and that if I get a kind of that scent just enters into my senses
immediate
recollections and reflections of those amazing, wonderful nights in that small club.
Yeah. With the whole acid house, the era of the acid house, when was it at its peak? Because I learnt about it in the summer of '88, but I was a kid.
Yeah.
I guess I was a bit late.
Yeah.
Was it really thriving in '87 when you opened the club, or did it take a while here?
The scene was building from late '86 and throughout '87 in places like the Hacienda and Nottingham and here in London, Delirium. But things really started to take off towards the end of '87 and then into 1988. And what followed was 2 Summers of Love, where everybody came together. It deconstructed the class system and social and sexual taboos and what have you. And everybody melded together, and we were having the time of our lives. And it became a tribe, a movement. And it was all about hope, optimism, and peace, joy, love, and unity. And that's what happened. And bearing in mind that kind of the 80s, particularly kind of that early 80s to 86 period, it was very economically depressed in the UK, and I think kind of we just moved away from all of that. And what happened was we created our own lifestyle, our own opportunities within music, and my career began. I'd always aspired to having a club of people, of music lovers, this crowd of music lovers, and that happened, and the reciprocation of the music and the audience, and it became a family.
Yeah, and here we are, 1988, and Mark Moore, who sat in your seat, is an amazing guy, big fan of S Express. This record got to #1, didn't it?
It did.
Tell me why you put this on your list.
I again, with this S Express, I used to go to Heaven nightclub, and Mark was the resident there at Pyramid, and he played it off a cassette there when he first produced it. So I ran to the DJ booth and asked him, "What's this track?" And he said, "Oh, it's my track," and he gave me the cassette.
Yeah.
So then I went and played the cassette on Kiss, on my show on Kiss Radio on Friday afternoon. But also when S Express became #1, and it was such a groundbreaking sample track at that time, alongside Mars, Pump Up the Volume, and Stock Aitken and Waterman, Roadblock, the use of samples. S Express, the energy in the track, and when that became #1, there was a club in Clink Street and after hours here that. Mark, there was a Friday night there, and it was released that it was #1, and I just felt so happy for Mark, and you could see Mark's energy was just, kind of, oh my gosh, I'm at #1, I'm a pop star. And what followed that, he became a full-on pop star. But we just felt so much joy and happiness because he was emanating all of this, happiness and joy of... And I think a sense of disbelief that he got to #1.
And he plays it down. I did say to him, rather embarrassingly, I think you're a genius. And he was like, well, I'm not sure about that, But he did create something that nobody else had created.
Oh, absolutely. So much energy, and it captures the spirit of that particular point in time and that unique history and the youth culture.
Yeah, great stuff. We go from S Express to The Message. Really important track, this. The reason why you put The Message in is because of what? Because it is an important record, isn't it? People say it was a game changer.
Absolutely. I think I think many of us feel it's the greatest rap song of all time. It's timeless. 4 decades later, still sounds great as the first time I heard this record. And I bought this in Groove Records, which was the American import store in Soho, where we'd all go to get our American 12-inch vinyl. And I remember that day clearly in the blue shrink wrapped sleeve, and I'd heard it on the radio and just played it over and over, and the lyrics, it reflects what was going on in the Bronx and New York at the time. And if you look at the video that accompanies this seminal track, that's how New York used to look.
Did you ever go to New York when it looked like that? Were you there? Did you visit?
First time I visited New York was in 1987, early on in. No, around the summer of 87, yeah. Yeah, and New York, yeah, again, like London, a very different landscape in New York. Very edgy, and actually, you know, the vibe of the edginess as well added to the magic of the city in a sense. But the you know, one of the parts of the lyric is you know, a child is born to the way. A child is blind, born to the way of mankind. Or is that the lyric? Hold on. I'm stumbling over my words here.
Well, at least you're getting
a child is born without a state of mind.
Say that again.
A child is born without a state of mind, blind to the ways of mankind. Just the lyrics are so. This is the ultimate conscious rap song, also, and it is the benchmark for everything. And I played with Grandmaster Flash in Cambodia, Vietnam, around 6 years ago, and that was at the start of Tractor, the DJ software, and he had a console over there and I was on this console, and he arrived a little bit late, and he got into a bit of a situation because his kit wouldn't work, and he turned around and said to me, "What have you done to my kit?" And I said, "Nothing, I'm playing here, Mr. Flash." And he got a bit flustered, and really, you know, I think, you know, in that moment of, because when, you know, kind of DJ technology has a bit of a glitch, it's like that moment of dead air as a radio presenter. Yeah. So you just do...
May have been there once or twice.
Yes,
Danny.
Exactly. So you just do something else, and I was expecting him to get on the mic and start vibing the room up, and then his sound engineer would have remedied the issue, but the issue went on for like it felt like ages, but it probably wasn't. But that I met him, and you know, he's one of my heroes, and you know, musically, and you
amazing.
Know, Sugar Hill Gang, it's just, and all of that, Grandmaster Flash and Melly Mel, and yeah, memories of that night. But I really wish I'd have got an opportunity to sit down with him and speak with him. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
great. Bruce Hornsby in the range.
Yeah.
The way it is, I always say to people, this is the finest track that features the piano.
Yeah.
Isn't it? One of them. But why have you picked this?
Because I spent close to a year living in America, and I lived in Key West in Florida, the southernmost point of Florida. And in the day, I would work on this construction site with this guy, Rob, who had this house. His mother had this house, and we were reconstructing the house. So, and the radio would be on, and every hour Bruce Hornsby would be played. Yeah. And I didn't find it annoying like all the other records on the radio at that time, and all these ghastly adverts which funded the record, the radio station. But it's just endearing memories of Key West, working hard, and I'd be on the building site in the day, and then at 4:30 finish, 5 o'clock, and then at 6 o'clock I'd go and work as a busboy, training to be a waiter in the Pier House, which was South Florida's premier restaurant.
Yeah.
And that experience taught me a lot about food and wine in my early 20s, and you know, kind of having a taste for wine, proper wine, you know, not Blue Nun. That was kind of about the best it got before working in that restaurant, and understanding food. And it's the first place that I ate an oyster in the oyster bar there. And got lots of stories to tell about that restaurant. But yeah, the radio again, you know, this particular song, it's just a lovely melodic piece of music, and it reminds me of those days in the sunshine in South Florida.
Amazing.
And things were changing in my life. I'd left the UK and thought I'm going on an adventure to change my life in America.
Yeah.
It didn't quite pan out that way. Well, it did. It was a great experience. But I had a car accident in America, and then had to leave, and came back here, and then
everything changed.
Went to
in any
Ibiza,
case. Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah,
so all in the sequence of events, yeah.
Great stuff. Danny, I want to ask you, as far as you mentioned when you started it, because when you started at Kiss, it was like a pirate station, wasn't it? Before the Kiss we know now, of course.
Yeah.
Back then, Was it difficult getting hold of these brand new records, or did you have contacts? Did people send them to you? You mentioned you had to go down a record store and try and find some of the. What was it like? What was the landscape like as a DJ back then?
But that was all part of and it still is, the thrill of chasing music and
getting the most in demand track.
Yeah, well, unreleased music and music that's rare, and that's where Rare Groove was born out with Norman J. You know, kind of rare. Boogie and funk and soul, and a continuation of northern soul, so it's all interlinked. But just I in my early days, I'd go and spend all of my money on records in London record shops, and that's my passion. And as my radio career progressed and my DJ career, of course, you get given lots of promos. And I still buy all of my music today.
I was going to ask you, do you? So you're still a kind of heavy buyer, are you?
Absolutely, yeah. And I value the music that I buy. It's ownership of music. Streaming's great and everything, but I'm in at the helm of DJing and music, and that's who I am, and I think many of my contemporaries are of that mindset as well, and that approach. But streaming has come in, and streaming is great for young DJs getting into the profession, because they're not having like huge bills of buying the music and then having a subscription to stream, so they can stream and then have all of that availability of music without the cost. Well, it has changed everything, and there's, like everything, there's positives and negatives. But it's impacted the sales of music, and it's impacted the royalties to artists. But that's part of kind of the negative part of it in a sense. But then kind of streaming is now, isn't it? And Mixcloud, where my mixes are, my radio shows and mixes. That's great. That's the positive side of streaming. Absolutely.
There are some great copies of some of your old shows that I was listening to, and I forgot how great the production was. And you used to have this jingle that said, "Danny on your tranny," a real chocolate box of a show, and it was just amazing. I love who did that jingle. It sounded like it was a drug queen. And back in the 90s, I thought, wow, that's so cool.
Andy Stick, a prominent face on the London club circuit.
Amazing.
And often in drag.
Really? So I got it right. So as a teen, I thought, I think I get that. I get that. Also, let me chuck a random question at you. Have you got a record that you're most proud of discovering, of playing, of breaking?
Oh, goodness me.
It's difficult, isn't it?
There's lots.
Yeah, chuck a couple of me.
Off the top of my head, that is a really, really, a question that I will have to think about.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Let's talk about Prince, Sign of the Times, next song. Tell me about Prince.
But back to that, most of the discs are hanging on my wall at home.
Right, okay.
Prince, Sign of the Times, again, it just reflects what was happening in that mid-80s period. And Sign of the Times, again, the Prince's lyrics and the wordsmith, the ultimate songwriter, or one of the greatest songwriters. But Sign of the Times, kind of talking about AIDS at the time, and the drug epidemics in America and around the world, but particularly in America, and the unstable nature, which is kind of like what we're living in today. But that it just encapsulates what was happening politically and on a societal level at that time. And it's just such a great funky track. And again, this was another track that was featured all the time in Amnesia as the sun was coming up towards the end of the set, generally with DJ Alfredo.
Do you remember, quick question, do you remember the first time you had that experience and you saw the sun come up in Ibiza? And can you remember how you felt?
Well, the first experiences in Amnesia, just heavenly, celestial. This is, this is it. We're this is paradise. This is, kind of a music and culturally, this is a paradise of music and culture and opportunity and inspiration, but also the togetherness of people from all walks of life, from the glitterati, the jet set, the fashion crowd, and just, you know, kind of kids who were there on, you know, kind of Euro tickets who'd go and spend the summer around Europe and hang out. Lots of the British kids were doing that, and there was a real mix of people, quite very special.
And does it still exist now? Is Ibiza still a thing?
Well, Ibiza still retains, you know, a lot of independent, unique characters and the expressionism, and that's what Ibiza is all about. And that's part of the attraction. You know, Ibiza has changed, but in our hearts, it hasn't changed, and there will always be a place in my heart, and for all of us who enjoy Ibiza, forevermore, eternally.
Brilliant. Yeah. People might be a bit shocked that you put Wham down on your list, but I'm not, and I think it's probably got an Ibiza-related reason, or I might be wrong. Tell me.
Well, there's part of that, but it's just a feel-good summer record, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was the early days of Wham, who burst onto the pop scene. And
what do you remember about Wham? About, you know, when they were really big? Because they did kind of get, if you watch that Netflix documentary recently, they did get canned as being cheesy, didn't they?
Isn't that such a great documentary? And
really is.
The research that went into that documentary with all that rare footage, it's just a beautiful documentary. I just
smiled for 90 minutes, you know?
Yeah, beautiful. But Wham were bursting on the scene in the, you know, kind of at that point in the 80s. And I worked in a clothes store in South Moulton Street, Browns, and they used to come in there alongside all of the pop stars at the time. I remember one afternoon, George Michael and Andrew upstairs looking out the window, and the street was just a sea of screaming girls. But I bought that track. I can't. Maybe it was $1.99 or not. I'm not sure. 99p in HMV
really?
On Oxford Street, just around the corner. But it also reminds me of Ibiza, and it's got the connection with Pike's Hotel, because Tony Pike, meeting Simon Napier Bell, who was Wham's manager at that time, they were looking for a location, and Tony had just, you know, kind of, he was expanding the hotel. So he said, yeah, come and make the video here.
And that's where they filmed it, isn't it?
That's right.
The pool.
Yeah, and all of the pop stars were staying there. But that gave Tony enough money to extend the hotel. And so it was a win-win situation. It put the hotel on the map, it expanded the hotel, and also with Wham, and, you know, kind of those early days of Wham and how they were breaking through. And it just epitomises great times and summer again. It's like, you know, it's just feel-good pop.
Yeah, but how daring.
How could you not like it?
To start the record with 50 seconds of crickets. Brilliant. I would have been disappointed had you not put Blue Monday, New Order on your playlist.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going up to the Hacienda, and we walked around with Graham Parker, and he said, Steve, this is one of the most important dance records.
Oh, yeah.
Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And the biggest selling UK 12-inch record of all time.
Wow.
But yeah, it's just the production of the song, produced initially in Cheetham Hill in Manchester, where all the pre-production was done, and then in Britannia Road Studios in Islington, London. But it's timeless. Again, 4 decades later, it's been remixed, it's been reworked, it's been sampled, and it's one of those tracks that, when that comes on in the club, it's just, you know, no matter what else is being played alongside that, it stands out and it raises the energy, and it's one of the greatest electronic dance records of all time. Yeah, and again, you know, throughout the 80s, it's been enjoyed in the 80s and through the 90s, and now into these two decades now.
Is it the kind of track, if it got played this weekend, would it still get a reaction?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, it does at the right time. Yeah, it does get a reaction, and everyone knows it and can relate to Blue Monday.
Yeah.
I think we'd all like to make a record like that.
It's just, and what is it that how can a record sound retro and futuristic all at once as well? That's amazing, isn't it? I mean, how does that happen?
But also the cycles of music. So that 80s sound, you know, has been very in terms of production techniques for forevermore, but particularly in the last 15 years or so, you know, kind of the drums and the synth sounds that are used in that production are used in many contemporary techno and electronic productions. So, Manchester's finest, definitely.
Yeah, amazing.
How does it feel?
Danny, like, a question I wanted to ask you, because I just thought of it about 10 minutes ago when we were talking about... we were talking about Prince, Sign of the Times, and him talking about where we were at in the 80s. We speak to loads of people, and I wasn't around in the 80s when the AIDS epidemic was big. I know that you've worked, in LGBTQ plus venues, the gay scene over years and stuff. And can you describe that dark period in the 80s and how it changed clubbing?
Well, just to add to that, I am a patron of the Terence Higgins Trust charity, and lost a lot of friends at that time. It was a quite difficult time for a lot of people.
Lots of people have said over the years that going through the darkness of that period almost galvanised the community, and it came back bigger and stronger and more determined. Did you see that over the years? Because, in the 80s, there seemed to be a period where people weren't going out that much, and it really affected, things. I just wonder if you could remember.
Outside of a core scene, but what happened when the house and rave scene came along, everything melded together. So clubs became very mixed, whereas before, they were relatively, apart from a few leading clubs, they were quite separatist. It was kind of gay or straight club. So the whole scene melded together. Yeah, and that's what happened, and it broke everything down, and that was a major positive turning point. But kind of people were passing away at very young ages, and went to so many funerals and good friends.
Really, it got very dark, did it?
Well, to use that word dark, but there was a lot of people passing away prematurely, and that was before there was treatments to prolong life, in a sense, and combat. But it had taken over at that time, particularly in the gay community.
And isn't it amazing we're here now and we're talking about this, and to young friends of mine, gay friends of mine, you have to almost talk to them about that, because it's not really such a big thing anymore, with PrEP, and also clubs are so mixed now. Just the whole landscape's changed, I suppose, hasn't it, all these years later?
It has changed, and that's a positive change, in my opinion, and we contributed to that initially and continue to contribute to the scene and the landscape of clubbing.
Yeah, and I remember Graham Park saying, years later, when when we were in the depth of you and the change you brought over from Ibiza, you could have had bricklayers dancing with drag queens. There was no,
That's how it was.
Yeah, it's amazing. You must have thought, wow, I've managed to change everything when you saw things like that.
I didn't change it. We changed it, of course, collectively.
But you were a big part, though, weren't you?
Yeah, I know, but I didn't I wasn't single-handedly changing the whole thing. Okay, our club was a core driver in everything, and it was embracing everybody. It was about unity and understanding, and and I think the scene does still uphold that, but society, I think, has becoming less understanding, and that's where we're at right now. But living through those times, incredible, unique. And throughout the whole of the 90s, kind of the whole thing with, kind of the mixed clubs, and there was no agenda as such. It was just like everybody just got on and respected each other, and there wasn't this separatism of,
It felt that way. It certainly did, didn't it?
Oh gosh, the 90s was such a party decade. And everybody was just having the time of their lives.
And a quick question:
dressing up and having fun and friends for life.
Your radio show on Radio 1, the Love Groove Dance Party, I read was the second longest show next to Pete Tong's show that lasted for so many years on Radio 1. Dance show, that is.
Yeah.
At that
congratulations.
Time, Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Did you ever think, was it a big thing for you when you started at Radio 1?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, oh my God.
Absolutely, yeah. I can remember walking down through there. There was a tunnel that would lead from one building to the radio studio. Yeah. It felt like walking as a footballer would, through the Wembley Tunnel onto the pitch. Got in this radio studio. It was huge. It was as big as a leading music recording studio.
Yeah.
And it had all old kit. There wasn't like Technics turntables and all of the modern latest
really
DJ kit. So, but that came shortly after.
Yeah.
But this was the first show, and the first.
And John Peel used to lead into you, didn't he? So
yes, and John Peel was the first person I was introduced to at Radio 1, and he was such an influence as a teenager, listening to, and before getting into my teens, listening to John Peel's radio show and meeting him in person, and very, very down to earth, lovely man, and such a knowledge on music. And he gave me this drum and bass track once in the studio. He said, "This really reminds me of you," and it's saying Rampling in this song. Well, it wasn't a song, it was like a bit of a rap with a drum and bass, this heavy drum and bass track. And I treasure that, yeah.
Amazing. I had to ask
just
you
the memories of that. And yeah, he was one of the greatest radio presenters alongside Annie Nightingale.
Yeah.
Who sadly passed away recently.
Yeah, of course.
And Steve Wright, seasoned, incredible radio presenters.
And you worked with all of these guys, didn't you? It's amazing.
Yes,
yeah, incredible stuff.
Yeah.
Incredible.
But very proud to have had 7 years at Radio 1, from pirate radio through to Kiss, and then really what was the top of the radio tree in a sense, going from a London station to a national and then a global with the introduction of the internet, going global. Mm-hmm. So there were millions of listeners. And
how did the Radio 1 thing happen? Did they hear that? I'm dying to ask, did they hear the Kiss show and were they like, that's the next sound we want? How did that work out?
Well, they poached all the DJs from Kiss, which was back at that time. Radio 1 was changing, and they wanted to broaden the reach of dance over the weekend. So they came and poached us from Kiss Radio, and that was difficult for Gordon Mack, who was the station director of Kiss and my mentor with radio, and gave me my break. And my manager at the time said, "You've got a month if you want to go and work on Radio 1. You've got a month." I said, "Well, can we not just work this, out in in a more appropriate way?"
Yeah.
And I had to leave, and that was it on kind of management advice. And next minute I'm at Radio 1.
Yeah.
But it was very daunting over the first few shows. Yeah. But as time progressed and got very comfortable, and the studio environment and everything, and
you totally made it your own,
Oh, absolutely.
It was your show, your zone, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It was getting the nation ready. It was the soundtrack to Saturday night, and as Pete Tong's show was on Friday night. Getting the nation ready to go out and party.
Yeah, amazing.
And
stuff.
that scene at that time, it was booming. Everyone was going out. The 90s decade,
amazing.
Pop, super clubs, just the club scene, the music, everything. It was an amazing decade, as you'll confirm also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Danny Rampling's here. I'm dying to ask you about this next track. Thank You. I never knew who this was by. I've heard this song a million times. The Night Writers, Let the Music Use You. I've listened to it on old school, mixes and what have you.
Yeah.
This was a pivotal track for your in your club as well, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Produced by the late, great and dear friend Frankie Knuckles, bless him. And the Night Writers was it was the ultimate house track, and I think it still is the ultimate house track, early house track. And at Shoom, I'd go into a trance playing this record, and it was termed the Danny Dance, but I was off in another world, because music and frequency, you can be transported into another world.
What is it about this track that does that?
The strings, and it's just the way it builds, and it's so uplifting. It's such an uplifting piece of music, and the Frankie Knuckles vibe is running all the way through the track. The ultimate Chicago house track.
Amazing. And still, does this make you feel things when you hear it?
Yeah, goosebumps.
Yeah, it is a goosebump territory track, isn't it?
Music that evokes goosebumps, and that's God in the music.
And we go from this song to the next one, which is such an important one. Joe Smooth, Promised Land, your final track. And by the way, thank you so much for doing this week. I haven't been too embarrassing, too Anaraki, have I? Or have I?
Not enough.
Okay, not enough.
Not at all, Steve.
Come on,
Pulling your leg.
This song,
Promised Land.
Yes.
Everything was changing. We're all part of this change. And, the Berlin Wall was coming down. Apartheid was crumbling. And, and all of this unity, hope, optimism, love and joy and, kind of opportunity and Promised Land. Meaningful lyrics, again, reflecting that period in the 80s that, take you to the Promised Land. And that's where we were all going. And we went there. Within our own world, we created our own world within the scene, and it's just, and again, it's a timeless piece of music, and it's very appropriate for what is going on in the world right now. All of these years later,
it's interesting you say that, because obviously we've spoken like this week about the dark times from the 80s and how we manoeuvred our way out of those. Would you agree with me when I say we seem to be in quite a dark area now, a time now of uncertainty, world of events and stuff?
Oh yeah, we are. Yeah, there's no denying that, and there's no kind of dismissing that. But we shine the light through music and raise the vibration, the collective vibration. And this particular track, Promised Land, as I said, is appropriate for now. It lifts the spirits. And it has a positive message of hope and togetherness and unity in this song. It's an anthem. It's a modern day anthem. And particularly for our generations, kind of from the early days of the scene and ongoing. And it's whenever it's played in a club now, it still gets the same reaction as what it got when it was introduced back then in the 80s.
And as we go into this beautiful track, I must ask you, it's so good to see you again. Are you still DJing? Can people still see you?
Oh yes, I'm still DJing.
Great.
Yes.
So obviously you do the radio show, so give me a few plugs. You're on...
I'm on forceradio.live each and every Saturday.
Is that live? Do you do the show before?
It's pre-recorded, yeah. And
that's
forceradio.live. That's my weekly radio show.
Brilliant. Yeah. So it's been amazing to chat with you and discuss your career as someone that used to listen to you, and you made a big mark on me, and you soundtracked so many nights out. So
thank you.
And I did meet you once in Ibiza. We won't talk about that because I made such an idiot of myself. But it's lovely to see you all these years later. Yeah. Danny Rampling, thank you so much.
And there's a good summer and year ahead. This is the year of abundance.
Excellent.
Hold the intention.
Can't wait. Thank you.